Welcome everybody to the Wholesaler Webinar with Catalyst Funding and Priority Settlement Group of Texas. We've been excited to get this information to you. This is for wholesalers. We wanted you to join us today to discover the advantages of teaming up with Catalyst Funding and Priority for your wholesale deals. And you're going to learn today about Catalyst paying wholesalers for hard money lending closings, among many other things. And that being said, I'll turn it over to the founder and CEO of Catalyst Funding, Wade Como.
Hello, everybody. Again, I'm Wade Como. Very excited to talk to you about our value proposition for wholesalers today, and to also talk with our partner. And Jenny Ross is leading the group from Priority today. Very excited to let them tell you about their value proposition for wholesalers. And we think together we provide a very unique set of positives and exciting ways for you to make more money, be more efficient, and to just overall be more successful in your endeavors to be a great wholesaler. So Jenny, thank you so much for joining us today. And Jeff, thank you for being here as well.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Sure. Jeff, do you want to let everybody know your role, and then we'll turn it over to Jenny?
Sure. So I am the Director of Lending at Catalyst. I've been there for since we opened 10 years ago. So I'm responsible for sales and operations, making sure that from the first point of contact with the customer, which is the loan officer, they have a great experience all the way through operations, closing, et cetera, et cetera. So very happy to be here with Jenny and talking to some wholesalers.
Yep. And then I'll say a few words about Priority before I turn it over to them. We first started working with them approximately 6 years ago. We also had a pretty significant wholesale organization. In fact, at one point we had a home investors franchise. So we have done hundreds of flips over the years. We own a pretty large single family rental portfolio in another division. And then we wholesaled tons of properties over the years. And we understand the challenges that you face. We understand the difficulties. We know it can be a challenging business, can be very rewarding, but it's also challenging. And we found Priority, and we spoke with them about what our unique needs were. In particular, understanding if a deal is viable right away is a really big thing, or quickly. That's something that we're going to talk about a little bit. But in addition to that, they're great at curative services. They're only a phone call away. Even senior level leadership is always there to fix things if you have a problem. But overall, the experience for us was incredible. We use them exclusively on all of our real estate investments and wholesale deals. And then we also, whenever we have the opportunity, encourage any of our borrowers or wholesalers that we work with to use them as well. They're absolutely fantastic. And I'll turn it over to Jenny to say a little bit more at this point.
Absolutely. Thank you, Wade. I appreciate the kind words. Nice to meet everybody. And thank you for having us on this webinar. As Wade said, we are a super investor-friendly title company. I know a lot of people say that, but we put our money where our mouths are too. So we can back that up with the service as well. I myself, I run operations here for Priority. So anything and everything you should need, whether it's on transactional level, just to float something by me, I'm always at your disposal. I come with 32 years of title experience. And a lot of it has been in REO, so I understand the messy issues, curative issues that you're going to run across sometimes in buying these lower price homes or these investment properties that you're looking at. So, we are also, I like to say, we pride ourselves on being the title company that says yes, right? We don't say no. We'll never ever get a no from us right off the get-go. That we like to find a way to, and we believe truly that there's a way to resolve just about anything we run across in the chain of title, that just about anything that's thrown at us is insurable. If I could, I'm just going to touch really quick, Wade, on some of the highlight some of the advantages of dealing with Priority, some of the things we offer. First and foremost, we do a complimentary notary service. Knowing that we only have brick and mortar in Houston, San Antonio, Austin, and Harker Heights area, we understand as a title company that services the entire area, we have to offer a solution there. And that solution is our mobile notary service. We do that free of charge. There is no charge ever to your client for closing that way. And that does also include a RON service. So if they want to close remotely through online notarization, we do that as well. And we do not pass on that charge. The other thing that you'll see with our notaries is we train each and every one of our notaries. We vet them, we train them, we do ongoing training with them, so they are experienced. You will never find a mobile notary that comes out to you and has no idea how to explain the documents to you. They're very, very well versed in all real estate closings. We like to pride ourselves on doing business with 4 of the largest underwriters in Texas. What that does, it allows us to have the flexibility to shop a solution to close your transaction. Where one underwriter might say no, another underwriter might be willing to assume the risk, and we always ask, we always look for an underwriter, a home for your transaction. So you will always, another really nice perk of dealing with Priority is you always have a dedicated client service team. You will always be working with the same escrow officer and the same escrow assistant time and time again. So whether you're working on a refinance transaction or a purchase transaction, you're not going to ever have to wonder, who am I working with this time, and find yourself running around trying to find your contacts here at Priority. Competitive pricing model. We offer flat rate pricing. We do not nickel and dime you. So when you are approaching a customer to buy their property, they're going to say, well, what is this going to cost me? You're always going to know what that cost for title services is going to be, again, because we don't nickel and dime our customers. As I mentioned, also, we do statewide coverage. We are directly licensed in 34 counties here in Texas, those being the majority of the major areas. And we do offer 2 to 3 business day turn time as far as the title delivery. We'll touch more on some of the other value propositions of using Priority later on down here in the slideshow, but I'll turn things back over to you, Wade.
Sure. And if we might be able to go one slide back, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Everybody was on the same page there. I want to cover a little bit about who we are. I introduced myself and Jeff introduced himself, but I also want to introduce our sales manager, Garrett Brown. We will provide his contact information at the end of the presentation, and Garrett will be the person that you will always interact with, along with our salesperson on a transaction. We'll make sure that you have more than one point of contact, just like Jenny is talking about, so the communication is always consistent and we are highly responsive. But I want to talk a little bit about what we do in general, just in case you do not know. We want to be the one-stop shop for both hard money and permanent financing loans. And if you're a wholesaler that's working on flips or on buy and hold investments, those are the deals that you're focusing on as far as placing them with investors. We support investors in both those categories extremely well. And we have a few products, especially in the buy and hold space, that no one else, even in the country, has that I'm aware of. So we really pride ourselves on having a unique product offering and trying to give the investors the broadest product offering with one credit pool and one single point of contact. As I mentioned earlier, we're real estate lenders built by real estate investors. So we try to take that experience and help you avoid some of the mistakes that we made in the past. Many of the people on our team are active investors, and really try to provide that support from a trained and experienced understanding. We have a very experienced panel of appraisals. So if you're worried about appraisals coming in low whenever you're trying to get that assignment fee, we can't guarantee a certain appraisal price, but we do have very experienced appraisers who understand this business. They're not afraid to walk into a home that's in bad condition. We all know those are often the best deals, right? The worse the home looks, often the better the deal. And our appraisers understand that, and they're willing to use that repair budget to get the highest ethical value, allowing you to get the highest possible assignment fee. And we have 5-star customer service across the board on all the different platforms, Google, Facebook, and we not only have those reviews from borrowers, but we have many reviews from wholesalers as well that really enjoy that overall experience. We offer, as I mentioned, a very wide variety of products in the hard money space, also conventional and DSCR loans. One thing for wholesalers is many of you may think, I don't have very consistent income, or I may not have income that is well documented, but we have a lot of people who are wholesalers who have solid assets and good credit scores who can actually become buy and hold investors by taking advantage of what are called DSCR loans. Those are debt service coverage ratio loans, and those allow you to get qualified for loans without providing any income documentation. In fact, you're qualified by the property's ability to pay the debt service or the mortgage, taxes, insurance, homeowners association dues, etc. So it could be a great way to get into that landlord or buy and hold cash flow game if you did not have a way in which to do it earlier. Anything to add to that, Jeff, before we move into the presentation?
No, I just wanted to sing some of the praises for Jenny and her group. We've been working with them for, I think, 6 years now. And, I can always pick up the phone and get a hold of Jenny. I mean, her team is great, but if there's ever an escalation needed, Jenny, Marcus, and Michael, they answer all the time. They are super easy to get a hold of. And I have experienced the underwriter access firsthand. Not that I spoke with the underwriter, but I remember going through a deal with Jenny and Marcus, and I think 2 or 3 of their underwriters said no. They found one that said yes and made the deal happen. So, you know, if you're a wholesaler, you would be very wise to start using Priority to get your deals done. They are very fast. They're very customer friendly. Like I said, they free mobile notary, so your borrowers don't have to go anywhere. They can sign wherever they want. Of all the service providers we work with, I can't think of anything better than Priority.
Absolutely. No, we're extremely happy with them. And I think it comes up sometimes where wholesalers working with a different title company, and we're finding it very difficult to get a response. Wholesalers saying the same thing. Yeah, I haven't heard from them in an extended period of time. And we'll often say, well, you know, if you're interested, you know, Priority might be able to help out. And we'll reach out to Priority and say, you know, looking at this title policy, does it look like something you can do? And they'll say, yeah, sure. And oftentimes that deal can be wrapped up literally in days, if not a week, whenever we were kind of languishing and just not moving forward, because mostly just attentiveness and responsiveness from the other title companies. That's not something that you'll experience with these guys. And in the rare instance, somebody on the front line may be out or something, like I said, senior management is always a call away. Everybody makes mistakes at times, or somebody has a family issue, but there's always a higher level of support that will get involved and make sure the situation is handled. That's one thing I've always experienced. Okay, let's go into that next slide. And I want to talk a little bit about what our objective is in this presentation. One, we want to extend an invite to all the wholesale community. We want to work with you. We consider you a client as much as we consider our borrowers a client. That's a change in our philosophy that happened at the beginning of this year, is that we want wholesalers to feel like clients, because we consider you someone who controls the flow of business in the real estate investment space. We completely understand that. And we know that in this environment, it's often a little bit more difficult to make fees. It's a little bit more challenging. And we want to say that we appreciate you and help our borrowers say that by paying wholesalers a 0.5 point on all transactions. It's called a dispo fee. We have our Catalyst borrowers pay that. The way in which we do that is that we have greatly reduced our pricing, and still, in many instances, we provide best-in-class pricing with the borrower still paying you a 0.5 point fee. We could take that fee, we could collect it. We choose not to, and our borrowers do pay wholesalers for that opportunity to work with you. So that's a really big deal. We have a lot of wholesalers who are very excited about that opportunity. Greatly increases their income on a transaction and really helps you to be more competitive in many ways whenever you're offering people as well. Anything to add to that, Jeff?
No, just wholesalers, when you're working with us, the 0.5 point, I mean, that is ingrained in our culture. So we're happy to reward wholesalers for doing deals with us. The other thing is that we've also changed or added a loyalty program. So folks that are repeat borrowers of Catalyst, they've done a deal before and they've paid us off, they get even better pricing. Like they get reduced pricing. I think every time it's a 0.25 point down to a 2 point minimum. But and some people 2.5. But the point is, if you bring back repeat borrowers, they get better pricing every time they do a deal, assuming they've paid it off and no problems, which 95% of our deals go that way. So no, this has been great. It's like Wade said, it's a new program we started out at the beginning of the year, and obviously it's been very well received. I'm happy to keep doing it.
For sure. And I think whenever you consider how borrowers evaluate deals, the fact that we have this excellent pricing and that we're really skinny up pricing, it does allow you to make more on a transaction. We have a couple other things that are unique that I want to mention at this point. We also have something called a bridge appraisal program that really allows borrowers to feel more comfortable in their appraised value, and that's not going to come in low on the second appraisal. If you're working with buy and hold investors, that's something else that's just top of mind. I was just talking with a wholesaler the other day. and he said that it really allows his buyers to feel more comfortable in paying up on a deal, which allows wholesalers to make a good, strong fee, because they know with Catalyst, as long as they're able to get through the rehab in that 120-day period, we're going to use the same appraisal we used on the hard money loan, which really gives them a lot of comfort. They're not as worried about, man, I'm maxing out my cash out of pocket here. I can't really go any higher. I'm worried about the refi. With Catalyst, they don't have to worry about that. So that's another huge asset that we offer. Another huge thing we have, we'll cover on the next slide here, if you guys don't mind, is transactional funding. And this transactional funding is a really big opportunity for wholesalers. And I'm not saying that you're going to want to use it if you're making a small assignment fee necessarily every time. But what this does is it means that you do not have to put a really large assignment fee in the face of both seller and buyer. And that can be a difficult thing at times to overcome with some people. Some people just get frustrated with it. We know that you're very transparent. You're making sure the person who's buying the home knows what they're getting. We know that you're being very transparent and make sure that the person who's selling the home knows what they're getting. But sometimes when there's a gap between those numbers, sometimes buyer or seller have a hard time mentally not becoming frustrated with that. And being a former wholesaler, I understand that whenever you make a big assignment fee of $20,000, you may have not closed the deal in 4 months, and your advertising cost may be $10,000 a month. And that $20,000 assignment fee means you're still in the hole $20,000 over the last 4 months. You know, it's hard sometimes for a buyer or seller to understand that, but us being in the business, we do understand that. And so what we've tried to come up with is to allow you to have access to what most big wholesalers do. Most of the biggest wholesalers in the country use transactional funding, or an alternative, maybe using double closes. Maybe they have enough capital to do double closes on their own, but the net worths of the world, the New Westerns of the world, many names you may be familiar with, other large wholesalers use the double close exclusively. I don't think we've ever seen a deal come from Net Worth or New Western that was not a double close. And many smaller wholesalers just don't have the capital to pay the entirety of the transaction up front so they can do a double close, because technically you need to pay, you know, there need to be 2 wires. There need to be a wire for you to purchase, and then additional wire for the next person to purchase from you. That's technically a double close. We allow you to have access to this product without having enough money to fund that first wire up front, which is what the big players do. So we're trying to, you know, give you the opportunity to have that same type of strength of your offer that other people do. Also, you know, that whenever you get down to it, sometimes buyers are frustrated with having and/or assigns on the contract. They like to see you as the buyer. And/or assigns can make them a little bit nervous. This type of transaction, you don't have to put and/or assigns, which is important for the assignment of contracts. So I'm going to walk through this a little bit. We offer no fee transactional funding. What that means is that you'll be able to not have to pay a fee for transactional funding, as long as you do a couple of things. We must be the lender on the hard money loan on the backside. So the buyer has to use Catalyst. We're not just giving free money without us getting the backside loan. It is a vehicle for us to get the backside loan, so we're willing to do this free transactional funding. Catalyst funding must be the lender. Priority Settlement Group must be the front and backside title company. This is a bit of a risky transaction. Transactional fundings always are. We're not making any fees from it, so we do have to make sure it's handled well on both sides of the transaction. So we want one trusted title company that we know well to handle both sides. You do not have to use Priority in order to make the half-point fee. That is not required, and you do not have to use it if Catalyst is the lender, but we do encourage them just because they're great in many ways, but not a requirement. But if you're going to use our no-fee transactional funding option, then you would have to use Priority on both sides. The front side transaction, I'm sorry, let me go back one spot. While Catalyst will wire the money to Priority before closing, the transaction will not be table funded. That is important. We're going to have the money there before, which is our policy on all transactions. We always have the money there so we can fund as soon as possible, but we do not table fund. We do have to review the documents from the closing. Sometimes they're If it's a double close, there are multiple closings involved. We have to review documents from all those closings. Oftentimes there's a mobile notary, so there may be an overnight of that particular package. So those things do take a little bit of time, but the money is there in advance. Front side transactions will not be funded until after a thorough review of both closings, which may or may not be at different times of the day. They do have to be on the same day, however. Both transactions must close in front of the same day. Most hard money lenders charge 1 point per transaction. Some even charge 2 for this transactional funding product. But if we're getting the backside transaction, we do not require that. And if you think about it, with the half point that our borrowers pay because of our excellent pricing, as well as the 1 point transactional funding savings, that would put an extra $4,500 into the average $300,000 deal for you as a wholesaler, which is a powerful amount of money. I mean, in many instances, that's often what you would make on a $5,000 assignment fee, which we often see assignment fees of that size in many instances. So that's a pretty big deal overall. Anything to add to that from a technical standpoint or anything else, Jenny or Jeff?
Yeah, I'll go first, and Jenny can speak to it. The only thing I will say is, one, I've seen wholesalers, borrowers, buyers, sellers, the whole nine get upset. No, wholesalers don't get upset, but I've seen sellers and buyers get upset at large assignment fees. However, I mean, look, we try and teach people that the deal is the deal, and no matter what the assignment fee, the price, if you're happy with the price, you're happy with the price. Who cares what the makeup of that price is? But unfortunately, human nature being what it is, sometimes they just can't get over that. So the transactional funding is a great way to avoid that risk if it's a pretty sporty wholesaler fee. The other thing is that I've spoke with wholesalers that are interested in this plan, but they and I appreciate loyalty, but they want to use their title company, and I just want to stress Wade's point. This is a special deal we have with Priority. I could not be more confident in telling wholesalers, hey, look, use Priority for these deals, and it's going to go well. But it does have to go through Priority as well. We've set this up with these guys. I know they're going to do a great job. We can't just use a different title company. It's got to go through Priority.
Yes, only for the transactional funding, only for the no fee transactional funding. I just want to clarify. If you come to Catalyst Lending, you do not have to use Priority. If you come to Catalyst Lending and you just want, you're interested in getting paid the half point transaction, the half point disposition fee, absolutely does not require Priority. We encourage it, but doesn't require it. But the only thing that does, so if we're going to take the risk of this, this no fee transactional funding, and we're going to have 2 separate closings, and we're personally going to be the one who wires the money for the first transaction, not you, us, it does have to go through Priority. Anything to add to that, Jenny, before we move on to the next slide?
No, just that obviously, the benefits of transactional funding eliminate the need, for underwriter approval on some of those larger assignment transactions. Underwriters, as you guys, wholesalers have experienced from time to time, the answers are different from underwriters. And it just depends on the level of exposure, the level of claims coming in, and that's a forever changing market. So there are a lot of title companies that put limitations, 10% limitations on assignment fees. We don't have necessarily those limitations. But what I will say with assignment transactions and everything is a case-by-case approval from underwriting. So where we have underwriters that are very, very friendly with the wholesaler assignment world, and they have allowed, some really, really large assignment fees to be approved and insured. The other benefit, disadvantage, I will say, of doing assignment transactions is when your buyer is paying, say, $300,000 for a home, and they're paying, a $25,000 assignment fee. That is money that's coming out of their pocket that they've put into this home, to this transaction, but it is not part of the liability that's insured under title insurance. So we're simply covering the price of the home, and the price of the assignment fee is not covered in that insured liability, if you will, under the owner's policy. So that's something that buyers do from time to time get a little upset with come the time of closing. So it's one thing that's, of course, avoided in the transactional funding process as well.
That's another great point, for sure. All right, so just covering a few other things on our overall value proposition for wholesalers. And I mentioned this earlier, but our background as wholesalers and real estate investors really helps us not only have the expertise to help you, but also we're very passionate about it because of our background. Another thing that's really important, a lot of wholesalers really appreciate this, is if you're wanting to build your marketing packet and get it out, you know, that can be a time-consuming thing. We'll talk a little bit about how Priority can help make sure that you're spending your time wisely before investing a lot of time in marketing a deal. But what we can provide is a very quick loan estimate. If you cover your designated relationship manager / loan officer with Catalyst and Garrett, our sales manager, we very consistently get a loan estimate out to you within 4 hours that you can send, so your buyers know the out-of-pocket on the transaction, which I think is a really big deal. Many of the wholesalers we work with will put financing provided on this transaction by Catalyst Funding, loan estimate provided by Catalyst Funding, and it really helps you have some legitimacy behind the numbers and have those investors feel more comfortable with the terms that are provided. So that's a really big thing, and we're very comfortable and excited about having wholesalers have endorsed numbers and numbers that you can feel comfortable sending out. We're really passionate about not missing close dates and providing outstanding communication every step of the way. Whenever we know the wholesalers who are involved, we cover you on all the communication. If there are challenges that's going to cause us to miss a close date, maybe we're having a tough time collecting airship affidavits, which Jenny and her team are very good at. I'm sure you know, going through probate, very expensive on the seller, takes a really long time. Using airship affidavits to correct inheritance issues is a much more inexpensive and quick alternative, and that's something that might slow us down a little bit, but we're going to update you. Priority is going to update you. We're going to update you. We're all going to keep you updated as the process goes along. And then we offer a very simple pricing and LTV model built on FICO assets and experience. It's very simple to understand, so that whenever you're sending us over a deal to price, we can get that done right away. We also offer 100% financing with no LTC requirement. And you know, I'll often tell wholesalers, I'm not saying we're the solution on every one of your deals. If you have a deal that, you know, may have a very difficult to estimate appraisal, sometimes we might not be the best solution for that. There may be somebody out there like a private lender or somebody that doesn't require appraisal that may be a better solution in some circumstances. Or maybe people who have really bad credit or don't have a lot of assets. Maybe we're not the best solution in those circumstances. I'm not sure. But I can tell you, if you have a reasonably easy to determine value, just reasonably easy, just has some solid comps, and you have a borrower with a reasonable amount of money and a reasonable FICO score, we're almost in all instances going to be able to give you a very low out-of-pocket number. That means that investors are going to be excited about that deal and willing to pay, in many instances, a higher assignment fee because of how low we can get the out-of-pocket. Whenever we say no LTC requirement, many of our competitors have a 10% LTC requirement. So that means no matter what, that person has to have 10% skin in the game, even if they're getting a good deal. We do not have that requirement, which means in many instances, we've seen our out-of-pocket on an LE loan estimate being sometimes half as much as some of our competitors. In other words, 20,000 instead of 40,000, 25,000 instead of 50,000. So it's very good to have us look at those deals, because if you can send out a deal that's 25K out of pocket instead of 50K out of pocket, that really drives investors toward your deal. We can do up to 75% LTV on deals up to 350,000. You know, a lot of people, you may work with some investors who are flippers, and a lot of our competitors, if it is going to be a flip deal, if they don't qualify for a long-term option on the backside, our competitors may limit them to 70% LTV, even on a smaller deal. Any deal, irregardless of the intention, if the person qualifies for it, they'll get 75% below 350. So that's a really big attraction there as well. We also have that loyalty program Jeff mentioned, get the investor down to as little as 2 points. And then once again, want to emphasize that 5-star customer service, and that many wholesalers have also given us that review, not just borrowers. Okay, Jeff, anything to add to that?
No, I just, like I said earlier, we really try to focus on wholesalers and them being, you know, kind of equal to clients. And so we, you know, if we know there's a wholesaler on the deal, we add them and their email to our communication block of people. So An appraisal comes in, wholesaler knows. If there's a delay with something, wholesaler knows. If we need help from the borrower, hey, we need your insurance, wholesaler knows. So we really try and keep the wholesalers up to date on what's going on. So there's nothing worse than kind of being clueless, right? There's nothing worse than sending a deal out and then like, oh, I hope it's going well. I really don't know. So we really do our best to avoid that feeling for the wholesalers and let you guys know what's going on from jump.
No question. All right. So the next slide, we're going to let Jenny talk about their value proposition for wholesalers. Jenny.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. So first, I think Wade kind of briefly touched on it, gave a little teaser to it as far as us kind of really letting you know how marketable title is on a particular property. So one thing that we have committed to Catalyst and this wholesale program and is title commitments within our licensed counties. Right now, we're licensed in 36 counties, directly licensed, where that means we can turn title in 20 and are committed to turning title within 24 hours for you. So you will have, number one, title delivered within 24 hours. Second thing we do in that is we provide a ruling as to the curative status. So we will provide that in the title bundle that's delivered out to everybody. And green will, of course, mean no major curative issues. Yellow will mean some curative issues, and red will mean major curative issues. And what I can promise you is in our title ruling in the past, it is a very, very, very rare instance where we have to issue a red, meaning a major curative issue. As I said, our stance is we believe we can work through just about anything. Priority will handle all aspects. You heard me right, all aspects of the curative process. We will never, ever, ever ask you to do our work for us. Our escrow teams take a lot of pride in our proactive approach and our unwavering commitment to clearing files efficiently and effectively. We have such a broad skill set of curative knowledge here. As I said, myself have been doing this for 32 years. I have seen anything and everything you could possibly see from a curative perspective, having worked many, many years for a large REO company buying 3,000, 5,000 units a month from banks, even in the messy time where foreclosures were all over the place and or they may not have handled any aspect of the foreclosure correctly. So we've got escrow teams that are currently working on transactions where we might need upwards of 28 to 30 affidavit of heirships, and we do all of that legwork. We go and obtain the questionnaires. We have been helpful in tracking down witnesses for those affidavit of heirships where maybe the surviving heirs say, hey, I don't even live in the same state as my deceased parents, and I have no idea who they were friends with or who their neighbors were. We do all of that legwork, all of that due diligence to track down and provide that necessary information, as well as, again, sending our notaries out from the curative perspective for anything and everything that might be needed to get us to that point of closing. Our escrow teams have the expertise needed. I've already touched on it, right, to resolve even the toughest of heirship matters. We will work with the owner, track down all the errors, coordinate executing all those necessary documents to clear the deceased interest in subject properties. Priority works with multiple underwriters. Again, I touched on that. We have very flexible guidelines for wholesale transactions. We understand that your needs may be specific. Your timeline is generally tight, and we're prepared to put in the additional effort and resources necessary to overcome any obstacles that we have, and we'll help with the help of our underwriters to do so. We also are of the mindset and understand the need to have a HUD specific to each side of the transaction. So by providing tailored HUDs, we aim to minimize confusion and facilitate a smoother closing process for everyone involved. I know these are commonly referred to as blind HUDs in the world in the wholesale transaction. And yes, we will offer blind HUDs on any and all transactions as a regular course of business. We will also, of course, commit to you, just as Jeff and Wade have committed to you here, to keep you involved on every single aspect of communication, starting from our welcome emails that we send out right away. We do a really thorough job of coordinating EMD and option, making sure that we are that everybody's compliant and meeting those deadlines under the transaction. Of course, that title delivery, we will keep you updated as far as when title is clear. We'll keep you updated on all the scheduling process. And we will always, always, always make sure you, as the wholesaler, are seeing the HUD first and foremost, along with the lender, along with Catalyst, to be sure that everything is approved from your side of things before we release the HUD to the buyer or the seller and start freaking people out when maybe figures might need to be tweaked a little bit. So we are always committed to, and I always speak with all my escrow teams on the fact that, hey, you want to release one HUD to the buyer, one HUD to the seller. We don't need to go back and forth. It creates a lot of confusion and a lot of question with those parties that don't maybe understand the balancing side of HUDs or CDs and the part of the closing process. So that's about all I have to add from my side. Turn it back over to you.
Yeah, I do want to make a comment on the top two. And whenever I first met with Priority, I expressed my biggest challenge as a real estate investor, especially a wholesaler, was that we would get a property under contract. And, you know, most of these deals are pretty distressed, right? I mean, distress can be many things, but oftentimes it means that there are title issues. It could be, property could be inherited. They could have problems paying their mortgage. They could have past due taxes. They could have a wide variety of things that are problematic. And what would often happen is we would get really fired up and we would market a property, all the effort that goes into that, putting comparables, putting together a nice presentation, getting it into an email form, calling your best buyers, all this effort, showing the property. Then we would find out after a week, there are so many title problems that the deal's not going to be able to close. Highly frustrating, highly inefficient, not allowing us to focus on things that we can monetize, that can provide income for us and our team. And I went to Priority and we came up with this platform. And I think it's outstanding because if you know within 24 hours in these major counties, which pretty much cover probably everybody on the phone, we're mostly working in the major metros here. And Jenny and her team cover those major metros very well. All those counties, like, you know, the major counties, Harris and surrounding, you know, Tarrant and surrounding, and all these major areas are very well covered. If you know in 24 hours, if you've got a green, yellow, or red light, that is a powerful thing because you can more aggressively manage your time and only work on the deals that have a real chance of closing. If you get that red, which is rare, it still happens sometimes, you know up front, and you might say, hey, I'm going to pause on putting all my energy and doing 15 showings until I know that we can get this worked out. And that is it's a real powerful tool. Secondarily, I actually met with one of the biggest wholesalers and agents in town and the Priority team the other day, and they said that the title company they were working with was pushing back all that curative work on them, you know, airship affidavits, finding witnesses, getting them signed. And that's one thing you do not experience with Priority. I think it's a powerful difference. It allows you to do more transactions, which is exciting for us because that means we're able to do more transactions if we deepen a partnership with you. And then it's a win-win for everybody involved because honestly, Jenny and her team are the experts at doing these types of things. And it puts you in a little bit of a difficult spot if you're not an expert on handling airship affidavits or other curative work. You know, why put that on you whenever you have the experts there? They have the skill set at a lot of title companies, but they may not have the desire. But Jenny and her team put together the desire and the skill set, and it really makes it so much easier.
We're pretty stubborn over here at Priority. We don't like to take no for an answer. We like to get stuff done. So I think you'll find that out. I treat each and every, and as do my escrow teams, treat each and every opportunity, each and every really, you know, hairy curative, you know, situation like a challenge, right? We're going to find a way to get it done. So, you know, one of the things I do think that's very, very helpful to all the wholesalers on the phone if you're dealing with the seller. One of the things we've found a lot of success with is if you know right from the get-go, you're talking to the seller, and they mentioned, hey, this property was in my parents' name and they passed, and we're going to do affidavit airship. Some of the things that we like to provide you with, if you would like, is the airship questionnaires that we use right from the get-go. Sometimes at the point of signing the contract, getting that airship questionnaire filled out, getting our seller information form filled out. Those are things that really help expedite the process and sometimes get rid of that lag, if you will, in communication with the seller if they're not so technically savvy, right? Filling stuff out online that's emailed back and forth. So that is something that we can offer to you as well that I think helps expedite the process.
Yeah, and that expertise can help you as a wholesaler provide value in that meeting whenever, you know, you and maybe a couple other wholesalers or investors are meeting with a distressed seller there in the kitchen or the living room, and you're You're talking through how you can add value. If you work with a title company that can handle heirship affidavits efficiently and well, and help them save the money of going through all the expense and time of probate, and you understand that, you speak about it intelligently, what a powerful differentiator between you and some of the competition that may not even offer that service, may not offer that capability. And they're just like, yeah, go through probate. We'll talk to you in 60 days, pay the attorney $3,500. You know, that's a very different situation. And if you can show that experience and differentiate yourself from the competition, you can get more deals in the contract for sure.
Yeah, I think, like I said, being able to confidently say, if it can be done, my team's going to do it and we're going to do it fast. That's way better than working with somebody who you don't have the confidence in. And you're like, well, let's get under contract and we'll try. Like that is two very different conversations. And the sellers are much more likely to sign on the dotted line with you if you have that confidence and stick with you to get it fixed, as opposed to, because it's just human nature. If you don't have the experience of success on getting these messy titles cleared up, you're going to sell from a point of hesitation, as opposed to if you've done these deals, if you've cleared up messy titles with priority, you're going to be a lot more confident when you're talking to these firms.
Yep, for sure. Okay, we're going to walk through two scenarios of transactional funding. One has a premium pass-through that will save you a significant amount of money. Jenny, let's spend more time on this. We'll briefly cover the next one with no premium pass-through. And in all honesty, you're going to have to sign disclosures, very minimal amount of disclosures with a seller anyway. And I think that this is going to be by far your better option, saves you a ton of money. We'll show you the disclosures that you have to sign, but this is going to be a way better alternative that keeps your costs minimal for the double close. And really, we'll show you the disclosures, minimal, not a big deal. Jenny and her team are great at explaining them. So Jenny, just walk us through the technical premium pass-through transactional funding process.
Absolutely. No, there is a legal way to do this based off of TDI's requirements. And so I'll touch first on the transaction structure. So it's where a client closes and funds an A to B acquisition using transactional funding that we're speaking of here. They simultaneously close the B to C sale the same day, and they do a pass-through premium credit from A to B to B to C. That means A to B, we're collecting the title insurance premium and passing that credit through onto the B to C transaction. Frankly, there's lots of title companies that will say, no, I won't do that. And they want to collect premiums on both of your transactions. And to us, it's a way to give back right to the end consumer. And why should we charge premiums on A to B when it's in existence for all of maybe an hour, right? There's no sense in issuing a policy that's going to just be void with B to C. So as far as the fees in that transaction, premium pass-through, settlement fees are $450 per side, charged on the transaction. Those are on A to B and B to C. OTP, though, that premium is only charged on A to B, as I said, with the premium credit pass-through from B to C to the B to C transaction. So you're only paying for that policy once, which is where the bulk of the fees are coming from. Title requirements, let's talk about those specifically with this premium pass-through option. Both transactions must close and fund the same day, but they can oftentimes and will fund a day later than they close. So depending on the timing that they close, we try to get parties scheduled earlier in the day. Schedules don't always allow, so if they need to close later in the day, of course, right, what we need to do is get our signed document packages over to Catalyst Funding to review, give us that funding authorization to be able to fund. So that's where, they have to both sign on the same day, they have to both fund on the same day, but those are not necessarily always going to be on that exact same business day. We have a premium pass-through authorization form to be executed by all parties. Later down in the slideshow, when I'm done here, we'll show you an actual sample of that form. And that is not signed before closing. It's not talked about before closing. It's signed as a part of the regular closing documents. All parties must sign and execute a disclosure of simultaneous transaction at the time of closing. Documents are executed. I've got a sample of that form also in Schedule B. Again, we're never, ever going to put you in a position where we are disclosing the fee on the B2C or the purchase price on B2C. It is just a matter of the fact that, hey, they're buying it, they're selling it the same day, and that's kind of the end of the story. And that does help protect you as well a little bit there with the newest legislative bill that have been passed, where TREC is, rumored to be, starting to maybe hone in on maybe tightening down the reins on those necessary disclosures that are required. So this is a way to kind of help protect us all, if you will, by just having that form signed at closing. And then Schedule C, which we're going to show you too, Exhibit C is a little bit of a cost comparison on all three types of transactions. So it'll cover estimated fees on a $300,000 transaction for an assignment transaction, where the premium pass-through is utilized, and then where a double close and paying premiums on both A to B and B to C is going to be disclosed. So you'll be able to look at that in the later slides here.
Perfect. That's a great breakdown.
And then this is, of course, our no premium pass-through option. The differences here are you're paying premiums on, there's no pass-through of premiums. You're paying that OTP premium on A to B and B to C. Both transactions still must close and fund the same day. That doesn't change. OTP is purchased, like I said, on A to B and B to C. The only you don't have to sign the pass-through authorization form anymore, but you still will be looked to sign the disclosure of simultaneous transaction, which we'll show you in Exhibit B as well. And again, that's for protection of everybody involved. So we can't have maybe an end buyer that says, hey, I had no idea this was going on, or a seller that later comes back and says, I have no idea this was going on. That document is again as a very light. I use the word disclosure in a very loose sense because it is very, very minimal, but it has been approved by our underwriters as sufficient to disclose that.
Yeah, I mean, in my honest opinion, we're merely letting you know this in case you happen to, for some odd reason, not like this one additional, really minimal form. They're already disclosing that there's a simultaneous close. So this additional form, I don't think is a big deal. I don't think that you're going to use this very often because it does increase the cost significantly. So let's go to the next page, if you don't mind. All right. Do you want to cover the closing highlights real quick? I think you covered it pretty well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll touch on them all. Make sure we dive into them. So on all A to B to C transactions,
There we go.
all parties will be provided with, again, that term blind HUD, meaning each party will not be privy to the other party's closing figures. And that's a standard protocol here on every wholesaling transaction. Closing an A to B to C transaction eliminates the need for an assignment of contract, which we talked about that and the kind of the nuances with that, especially as underwriters kind of tighten their reins a little bit, limiting wholesale fees. Wholesaler will be included on all communication with buyer and with seller. One thing we like to touch on is that we do keep parties' communication separate. So where you're the wholesaler transaction, you're going to be copied on the emails to the seller, and then there's going to be a separate set of emails to the buyer, and you're going to be copied on those as well, understanding that you're truly in the middle of this transaction, right? And so option to pass through premium using closing option 1 that we provided to you, again, eliminates the need to collect OT premiums on both transactions. One thing we do like to mention is priority must communicate directly with the seller, but we'll always include you in all communication. And so if you let us know from the get-go as a wholesaler, hey, I've got a really, really difficult seller, they like me to be involved in everything, we don't have an issue, right? Calling you ahead of time, getting your permission to call the seller. Maybe you want to call the seller together. Maybe they're more comfortable having us both on the phone together. We're willing to work with you in that instance, but we always have to talk to the seller. And I think all of you in the wholesale world understand that. It is a really good way to protect yourselves in dealing with fraudsters out there. So we are very, very mindful of that. It is an issue that's running rampant and just continues to grow. They keep getting more and more creative by the day. And so we feel really, really good about our protocol here in vetting sellers, making sure we are dealing with the true rightful property owner in each and every transaction. So that's the purpose of that.
Sure. All right, so let's go to this next slide here. And Jenny's done an amazing job of breaking down how the process works. And I'm just going to say a couple things very quickly. So you see here, a typical assignment is, if you go to the far right, $29.55. This double close with a pass through is under less than an additional $1,000, right? So if you're making a small assignment fee, you're probably just going to, in many instances, want to roll with the assignment in all candor. But I can't tell you how many times in the industry that Jeff and I have seen this, where there is a large assignment fee and either the seller or the buyer, for some reason, even though you were completely transparent, you told them, Mr. Seller, I'm paying you $100,000. Mr. Buyer, you're buying it for $120,000. You know, they were both very happy with those numbers, completely happy. But at close, something can go awry. And then, especially with the seller, I mean, you can sue for specific performance with the seller. You know, good luck getting that through. It doesn't happen. It's just, you know, honestly, if that person is in a distressed situation, you're not going to be able to sue their way into a closing. Just doesn't happen. Now, maybe you filed a memorandum, which is often a good move, and you have some options there. But, you know, at the end of the day, getting them to the closing table has to be, it's less of a stick and it's more of a carrot. And because you just can't force someone to sell, especially someone who's in a, you know, you could potentially a couple of years down the road, if you go through the legal system, I guess you could, but it's really not a viable option for wholesalers. So you want to make sure they're happy. So the question is, if you're making a larger assignment fee and you're making up for all the expenses you paid, does that extra $1,000 warrant it if you're making a significant fee? Or if you have a seller that you know may be difficult, or a buyer that you think may be difficult. Any of those things are reasons to really entertain this. $1,000 for the safety of making 20 is a real reasonable option. And I do want to emphasize one more time. I think this is very important. The biggest wholesale companies in the country use double closes every time. And there are more fees for them as well. I mean, there simply are. But there are a lot of advantages to using this platform because you have fewer deals fall out late in the game. There are other advantages like Jenny talked about. Your investors on the backside get a larger insurance coverage. There's so many different things that are a big part of it. And I think that it's something to really, really consider whenever you're looking at your overall business plan. And it gives you an option to get in that game. Net Worth and New Westerns of the world, they don't pay transactional funding fees to people like us. They have enough capital built up over time to where they often do that on their own, out of their own capital. They pay maybe a little bit lower fees, but they do it on every single deal. And you have the opportunity to do that as well with a no fee transactional funding, which is pretty exciting. Now, Jenny, just walk us through these two forms because I want to show everybody the two minimal forms you have to get signed. We got two forms, right?
Correct, yes, and I'll speak to those. So this is the premium pass-through authorization form, and this is a form that allows us to be, again, TDI compliant with rate rule number 2. If you guys aren't familiar with Texas Department of Insurance and their many of procedural rules or rate rules, if you're bored one night and you want to read through the manuals, they're all online and they'll drive you nuts. So again, it's all about being compliant pursuant to rate rule number 2 of TDI's insurance regulations. So this premium pass-through authorization is simply signed by, again, the buyer, the ultimate purchaser, the intermediary being the wholesaler, and then the seller. Just acknowledging that we are using premium collected on A to B transaction and passing it through to B to C transaction rather than issuing a policy on both transactions.
Yeah. Then on the next slide, this is the disclosure of simultaneous transaction, which has to happen anyway, right? So the other form, I don't think this may be the more challenging form. Whenever the closer explains that person is getting the benefit of not paying 2 premiums on 2 transactions. Once you've exposed that there are 2 transactions, I think that other form is almost a non-issue. I can't imagine a world in which that's an issue. So I really think that option of just being about an extra $1,000 more approximately is what you're looking at. So having that as an arrow in your quiver is a really good option for a minimal price. I don't think you're really going to have to entertain the significantly larger option with 2 premiums on 2 transactions.
Absolutely. And then to touch on the disclosure of simultaneous transaction, as you see, it's a simple, very simple, basic disclosure, just letting everybody know, understanding that there is a contract that exists between the seller and the intermediary, and then a separate contract that exists between the buyer and the intermediary, that the property is being sold simultaneously at a higher price. Again, we will never, ever disclose. Say we get to the point of closing, they're sitting with my closer and they say, well, what is that higher price? thing is you've got two different contracts here, and that ultimate purchaser, that end buyer, is not a party to that underlying contract. So that is not something that we even can disclose to them. So that is never something that you'll find us disclosing to them. Really, the main point of the disclosure is so that everybody understands that everything has to close and fund the same day. Oftentimes, right, you'll have different closing at different times. So you might have the buyer on the B2C transaction closing at 4 o'clock, whereas the seller on the A to B transaction closed at 9 o'clock in the morning. They have to fund together. So that lag in that time there is just, this helps us get the seller's acknowledgement that both, again, are have to close and fund simultaneously. They're contingent upon each other. So we just kind of avoid any issues, if you will, later in the day when we've got a seller looking for money, 2 hours after they've already closed, where we're waiting on the simultaneous transaction to close. So, and again, with the new legislative bill that kind of came out pursuant, around wholesalers and needing to disclose that relationship if you're not a licensed agent, this has also been looked at by my underwriter, and they said, yep, that's good to kind of help you all, right? It doesn't limit what you need to do on your side, but it is something to get ahead of it, while word from Trek has kind of been obsolete right now. We've not heard anything. So this is, again, another way to a document that's going to be signed by everybody to help us all, if you will, with that disclosure requirement.
Yep. I think it's very simple, easy to understand, and I think this will be a lot easier for someone to navigate than to see often that big assignment fee. That can be a little bit more frustrating than having two closings, for sure.
Yeah, and this is something new. This is something new. Real quick, Greg. This is something newer that Wade and Jeff have come to us and said, hey, you guys always used to send this email midway saying, hey, everybody acknowledges this is a double close, and that becomes tough, right, in the middle of a transaction, and it creates those questions, and so we have moved to. Those discussions are not part of the processing, on the transactional level. It is simply presented to them at closing with the remainder of the closing docs. And so we find that a lot easier, a lot less likely for a seller or a buyer to want to back out of a transaction as well when they're sitting at the closing table, right? They're at the finish line. So that is, again, something that my underwriter has given us a blessing on as well, that they don't care when it's signed, just that it's signed. So that's something that's good as well, because again, our old model did have us sending emails to parties, and we knew that was a little bit clunky. So much appreciation again, where Wade and Jeff come in with their expertise as a wholesaler, have been an investor, and they're looking out for you guys too, to make sure that this is it's got a nice flow to it. So.
Absolutely. I do want to mention one last thing, just a point of clarification, is that both sides of the transaction must close on the same day, and both sides of the transaction must fund on the same day, but that may not close and fund on the same day. So for example, we might close both transactions today because they both have to close today, and then they both may fund tomorrow because we have to get the docs in, have them reviewed, et cetera, et cetera. So I do want to clarify that. They both must close on the same day. They both must fund on the same day, but there may be a gap in time in between us getting that transaction funded. Okay, so again, really appreciate everybody getting on the call. We do have, just for those that may be leaving in respect for everybody's time, I do want to get some communication ways to reach us out there. So if you are interested in working with Catalyst Funding as a wholesaler, please email leads, that's LEADS, leads at catalystfdg.com. That's Catalyst, CATALYST, FDG.com, frankdavidgeorge.com. If you will email that, we will have someone reach out to you to talk to you more about the platform, get you set up. Very excited to work with you in all these different ways. And Jenny, what is the best way to reach out to Priority if they're interested in working with Priority as a wholesaler?
Absolutely. I would suggest reaching out to myself directly, and my email address is gini.ross, R-O-S-S as in Sam, at prioritytitleus.com. Again, it's ginny.ross at prioritytitleus.com.
Awesome. Now, for those who do want to stay with us a few more minutes, we can maybe go about 5 more minutes and answer any questions. Derek, do you have just no more than 2 questions for us?
I don't think there's any questions.
Okay, perfect.
No questions.
I guess maybe we did a good job on the presentation and we covered everything we needed to cover. So great job there, Jenny. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for everyone who joined, and everybody have an excellent time out there in the real estate investment space, and we look forward hopefully to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great one. Bye-bye.